You're listening to the Iterators of the Imperium.
Hi, I'm Mess, and I'm here with my lovely co-host, Ryan, and you're listening to, I can't even believe I'm going to say this, but Season 6 of the Iterators of the Imperium podcast. The podcast in which Ryan is the expert on Warhammer 40k, and I'm still the noob, trying to learn about the Warhammer universe. Lots of stuff has been planned for this season. It's gonna be a wild ride. So strap in and you take over, Ryan.
You know what's funny? You know what's really funny? I have one of those like buckle up kids written for this.
Oh my god! Let's go. Buckle up, kiddos.
All right, so we did our wheel spin to decide which major character's storyline we were going to follow this time. Because last time we did the orcs and we followed their storyline, but obviously we had Gazkul as like a main character for it. This time we wanted to go for just following a main character, right? So we did our wheel spin, which we have available. I'll show you. Oh, it in here somewhere. I don't know where.
On your screen right now, if you're watching from Spotify or YouTube.
Yes. And the result we got was Ahzek Ahriman, Chief Librarian of the Thousand Sons, Magnus's second-hand man. Second-hand man? Right-hand man.
Second-hand man.
Second in command, right-hand man. Second-hand man really sounds like he brought him back from the dead or something. Or got him from someone else. I don't know. Anyway.
Your right-hand man from wish.com. Let's go.
That's it. There you go.
Yeah.
But before we, dig into this, I want to give a bit of kind of, I guess, a warning beforehand, right?
Okay.
This isn't going to be what you would think of as a typical Warhammer story. It's not blood and gore and grand wars for the sake of the galaxy or all humanity. It's more intrigue and mystery, and it's far beyond the scale of just like soldiers in a firefight. It's like demigods and gods wielding the power of sorcery against each other, trying to outsmart each other. And beyond all of that, it's a much more personal story as well, because it's not just like everyone celebrates because we won the battle and, saved these 3 planets. Right, while like 86 more burned across the galaxy. It's really down to one guy throwing everything away for the sake of his brothers and his family, and then continuing to fight on, trying to save them long after he's lost everything.
Okay.
Right. So, buckle your crash webbing, recite the litany of protection, and guard your souls with the armor of contempt. And let's talk about heretics.
Heretics?
Heretics! So, I decided I was going to do little, titles for sections of this, because I thought it'd be, something that I could write silly nonsense for. But some of them are just going to be perfectly normal titles. So I'm titling this first section, The Red Sorcerers of Prospero. And I think that, I did have a good picture for this. Is it this one? There you go. Yeah, the Red Sorcerers of Prospero, right?
Yes.
So, Thousand Sons all wear red, they're sorcerers, and they live on the planet Prospero. It's pretty self-explanatory.
Yeah.
So, I think that the first thing we need to do is we need to, go right from the start of Ahriman's storyline. There's no point in picking up from later on, because we haven't talked about him in, quite a while, because there was a load of orcs in the middle. So I'm like, we should really make a point of, going from the beginning here. So the start of this might be a bit of, stuff that sounds familiar to you. So, Azhek Ahriman is a Terran-born recruit for the Thousand Sons Legion, right? So he was born on Earth, which, to be fair, all of the original recruits were, but obviously a lot of them later on came from the Primarch's home planets. So he was born with a twin brother called Ormozd. Right? So Azhek and Ormozd Ahriman, which, interestingly, are actually the names of the gods of, or the deities of, good and evil from Zoroastrianism, I think it is. it's not like a religious group I've looked a lot into much. I think it's a religious group. I'm pretty sure it is. I haven't looked into them much, but interestingly, this guy and his twin brother are named after their gods of good and evil.
Yeah.
So there's that, which is fun. So yeah, born with a twin brother on Terra, the two of them both get recruited to the Legion as student aspirants, which I guess is the term used for those who were brought into the Legion already showing psychic abilities. Ahriman had prophetic dreams as a child. He would see visions of the future, and Ormuzd, we know for a fact, could at least make small objects levitate. So they already had some powers when they were recruited for this. Although I should explain that initially it's thought that 1,000 recruits were brought onto this Legion, and then after they were created, they were sent out into the galaxy to start the whole Crusade thing. They were one of like the earliest ones that were sent out, with only 1,000 of them, and that's why they get the name the Thousand Sons, even though, you know, at the point that we really start looking at any Legion, there's usually around 100,000 of them. This is why. It's because originally there was 1,000.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Obviously, that name's meaning becomes true again later on. But that's a personal issue for these guys. So it's around 5 years into their service within the Legion. So 5 years in that they're, you know, out in the galaxy actually doing stuff, that the Legion as a whole spontaneously begins to display psychic powers, right? So a large amount of them just randomly gain powers. So it's a weird one though, because it's never explained specifically what this means. So there's two kind of versions of this. It could be people without powers gained powers, or it could be those who were recruited already having powers. These, you know, like aspirants that were recruited already having them, their powers vastly improved. It's probably both. So some people that never had them gained them, and some people that already had them got more powerful. But about 5 years in, this occurs, which, you know, is pretty handy for a Legion of Sorcerers. Well, it's how they become a Legion of Sorcerers, I guess. But it also began to show the genetic flaw with this Legion, which is the flesh change, where they rapidly mutate into, well, big creepy monsters with way too many arms and stuff like that. So yeah, it's as their like psychic powers grow that they start to develop these issues. And obviously they lose a lot of people to this issue, because when your mate turns into a big tentacle monster and you've got a gun in your hand, I guess first thought is blow its fucking head out its ass, which is probably what happened to most of them. Interestingly, they don't talk about it a lot, like what happened to the people that went through the flesh change. A lot, like they spend a lot of time in the Ahriman novels talking about how they lost a lot of Marines, like a lot of brothers, to the flesh change, but they don't say specifically how they died. So we don't know for a fact if you just mutate and eventually just keel over once your body's like messed up enough. Like maybe you're losing organs and stuff as you're mutating, so maybe your body just turns off at some point. Or there's the much more likely, in my opinion, option, which is that once your mate starts mutating, you just put him out of his misery because you're not going to fix it. There's no amount of sorcery in the galaxy turns you back from a blob of tentacles into a guy. You know what I mean? So, yeah, they lost a lot of dudes in this period. And obviously, once this started occurring, they obviously involved the Emperor and his right-hand man, Malkador, to try and fix it. Because they were, like, master sorcerers and master geneticists and stuff. Surely, if anyone can fix it, it's the dudes that made them Space Marines, right? But they really couldn't figure out what the cause was. There was no obvious reason that this existed. So they settled on, it's probably because your Primarch isn't around, you know? So they kind of just kept getting rid of the bodies of the dead ones while they looked for Magnus. And eventually they did find Magnus, and upon finding him, as far as the Emperor Malkador are concerned, the flesh change kind of just went away. It stopped happening. And they kind of figured it was like some kind of, like soul resonance bullshit that having him nearby stopped them all from, maybe it was like a stress thing from not having their dad around. This was their version of daddy issues, basically.
I was about to say.
Yeah. That's what the Emperor and that basically settled on. Like,
Yeah.
okay, yeah, it's cool. He's around, he came back, he got his milk, it's fine. In reality, all it was Magnus, who had grown up on a planet of sorcerers, had taught his sons how to, be sorcerers properly. So since they were using their powers correctly and stuff like that, they weren't incurring all this, like, extra chaotic fucking mutation into themselves. Because it turns out when you're a totally inexplicable magical being, if you don't know what you're doing, you're probably going to make some mistakes.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the biggest thing to take away from this whole bit is that one of the Marines that died was Ormuzd, Ahriman's brother. Or Azhek Ahriman's brother. He actually passed away due to the flesh change. And this sets in motion like a series of events that will change the galaxy forever. Just this one guy dying. Because Azhek Ahriman, who obviously survived his brother, he basically gets this utter disdain for the flesh change as a whole, and it becomes like entwined into who he is as a person on like a foundational level, that he is going to get rid of the flesh change so that no one ever dies to it again. None of his brothers will ever go through this again, as far as he's concerned. Like, he is fixing it no matter what it costs.
Yeah.
All because he had to watch his actual biological twin brother die to it. Which, again, puts it in my head that there's like a fair chance he probably had to shoot his own mutated brother in the head. Which does kind of, make you go, I can see why this is a big deal for you, actually.
Yeah, I can understand.
I imagine losing a brother isn't fun at the best of times, but when you're the one that has to end his misery, I think it probably really drives the point home,
Yeah.
Like, there's a lot I can
it.
forgive if that's what he had to do. But yeah, this basically sets him on like a lifelong path of self-destruction and folly, because he's trying to, fix this insane magical issue. So this obsession kind of drove Ahriman pretty heavily to the point that he like masters his power. He works harder than anyone else because he's trying to get to this point of like fixing this curse. So he ends up quickly rising through the ranks of the Thousand Sons, mastering his powers, becoming the chief librarian and Magnus's right-hand man. And he becomes captain of the first company, which is the rank given to the right-hand man. So, like, for Horus, it was Abaddon, the Despoiler. It was just Abaddon at the time. It became the Despoiler later. But captain of the first company is always the right-hand man. So, he ends up becoming the captain of the first company. And he also becomes commander of the Sekhmet, which is the Thousand Sons, like, elite veteran troopers, which is quite cool.
Yeah.
And he also became the leader of the Corvidae, which is one of the cults of, like, speciality within the Thousand Sons, where the Corvidae focus on, like, reading the future. So, precognition. Yeah, they're soothsayers, basically. That's their whole thing. He became their leader as well. He became a lot of things, I'll be honest with you, including Magnus's favourite son. I don't know why, but he is. It's just Magnus's favourite kid. I'm just imagining Magnus standing in front of all of his sons and be like, no, I don't have a favourite. Okay, well, I have one favourite.
There is one.
There is one. Although it's probably worth actually taking a moment to mention this. So, these are the symbols of the 5 cults of the Thousand Sons. So, once you become like a good sorcerer, you kind of end up in a speciality, and it's one of these groups, basically, is the way it works. There was a 6th one that was like kicking around for a bit, but it was never made like an official one recognized by the Legion. I guess because it was too dangerous or because it was just kind of stupid. So just to let you know what they are, the one in the top middle, the Corvidae, the crow face, those ones are seeing the future. The Pyre, which is this one here, the big fiery phoenix looking thing, that is, pyrokinesis, so fire control, so they just burn everything. The Pavoni, which is the feather at the side there next to you, they are like biochemistry. Their whole thing is like they can use their magic to like amp their body up to like, times 100 kind of. It's like Kaioken in Dragon Ball. Just make themselves stronger using magic. So yeah, these guys can like precision engineer their body chemistry to like make them the ultimate physical fighting machines. It's a weird one. It's like, yes, I'm magic, but I'm magic in the way that I can punch you to death with my bare hands. Which is an interesting strategy. I like it. Everyone sees Sorcerer and they're like, oh, I better keep my distance. Oh, sorry, I better get in close because he's gonna throw fire at me and stuff. And you get in close and this guy just gut punches you into the moon. There's the Athenaeans, which is the eye up at the top left. They are telepathy, so they move shit with their minds. These guys will just drop a car on you and move on. That's it. No, that's not what telepathy is. Sorry, they're mind readers. No, they're mind readers.
Is it? Oh, it is. It is.
Yeah, so sorry, the Athenaeans are telepathy, they're mind readers. I was mixing it up with the Raptora, this last one, the claw up here, which is telekinesis, which are the ones that can move shit with their minds, and they'll drop a car on you. So
that's how it is, yeah.
I guess, the Corvidae already know what you were gonna do in the fight. The Pyre will just, turn you into a pile of molten ash. The Pavoni will, punch their fist clean through you. The Raptora will drop a car on you, and the Athenaeans, I guess, will mumble insults into your mind while they fight you. I don't know. I guess telepathy isn't a particularly combat-focused ability. But,
nah.
There's probably... I guess you could just mumble really creepy, disturbing things into their mind as you're fighting them and just really put them off. You know what I mean?
Really get in their head. Did you forget to lock the door when you left, that would be on my mind. I wouldn't be able to focus.
Really unnerve them.
Yeah. Yes.
Just mumbling total bullshit into their mind while you're fighting them. You're in a one-on-one sword fight to the death for the sake of your entire legion as far as you're concerned. And as this guy's fighting you, he's trying to focus really well on what you're doing. And all he can hear in the back of his mind is hey, did you know dogs are allergic to fire? And he's like, what? That doesn't make any sense. Just clear, total, complete bullshit mumbled into the back of their mind all the time.
I like it though.
Yeah. So the sixth one that was, kicking around for a while were the Aquili, which, their whole thing was astral projection. They could, yeet their soul into the warp to just go and, look around and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And this never formally became one of, the recognized cults, basically because when you yeet your soul into the warp, anything can eat it, and it's really dangerous, because if your soul gets hurt, you die.
Yeah.
So it's a really stupid idea to do it in the first place. So I guess Magnus never really agreed to it being a cult because he didn't want to encourage his sons to start doing this. And let's be honest, right? The most famous time Magnus himself ever uses astral projection as an ability, he lets demons into the palace and pisses off the Emperor enough that his entire legion almost dies. So you're like, I kind of see where it was coming from with the whole don't astral project thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Good times. So, alright, back to Azhek Ahriman. So, there you go. There's Ahriman, looking sexy as always. I don't know why they did a bunch of pictures like this in this weird sketched ink style that are really cool of a bunch of the characters.
I like
so.
That.
After Magnus's fuck up with the whole destroying the wards on around the Imperial Palace thing with his astral projection, and he knew the Emperor was going to send someone to like slap them about and take him in for trial, right? Which is what the
Mm-hmm.
Emperor actually did. He sent Lehman Russ to go and arrest Magnus, right? Bring him back to Terra so that the Emperor can like fucking tell him off to his face kind of thing. That's all he wanted. He just wanted to get him one-on-one and have like an actual trial with him. In reality, I think there was a good chance what the Emperor was gonna do was make Magnus sit on the throne so that the Emperor wasn't stuck there. Because Magnus was a powerful enough sorcerer to take the role, at least for a time. But because he never got brought back, he was just kind of. The Emperor had to do it, so he was stuck there. But I think that there's a good chance that that was actually his plan, was to force Magnus to take the role as a punishment kind of thing. But
Yeah.
obviously, Horus gets in the way and changes it to a kill order rather than an arrest order. But because Magnus thought he's going to send someone to, arrest me or, whatever, interrogate me, whatever it was going to be, he ordered all of the Thousand Sons to stand down and just await punishment. So they had
Mm-hmm.
no defenses ready when the Space Wolves got there, ready to murder them all. But obviously, this turns out to be a bit of a turning point for Magnus and Ahriman, because those two have been really close up until this point, favourite son and all that. But this is the point where Ahriman stands up to Magnus and like refuses to await punishment because he doesn't think that they've really done anything wrong. Because I guess at this point to Ahriman, it's all about intentions. They never intended to do any harm. It's just shit went wrong in the process. They were trying to help. They were trying to warn them
Yes.
about Horus being evil. You know?
Mm.
So he wasn't gonna like just. He refused to just wait for punishment, which is a really lucky move because it meant that they had some defenses prepared when the Space Wolves actually did turn up.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, they would have just been nuked into oblivion. That would have been the end of it.
Please.
But there is a really awesome quote from when Ahriman is like shouting at Magnus about how they're not gonna just take it. So the quote is, "We are the red sons of red sorcerers of Prospero, damned in the eyes of our fellows, and this is how our story ends: in betrayal and bloodshed. No, you may find it nobler to suffer your fate, but I will take arms against it." It's a pretty good quote, I think.
That's not
So,
bad.
yeah, so Ahriman ends up like leading the defense of Prospero. Obviously, this causes the initial stages of like a drift between Magnus and Ahriman. Right, they get kind of further and further apart as time goes on. But this is like the first in a series of falling outs that they have that only drive them further apart.
Great.
Yeah, it's all very dramatic, the two of them screaming at each other, which is really interesting when you think that Magnus is like 4 feet taller than the other dude. So it's like a guy getting shouted at by like his like 12-year-old son. So the whole thing ends with Magnus, being murdered by Lehman Russ at like the exact same moment as Ahriman finalizes the spell to teleport all the Thousand Sons off of the planet. And
Yeah.
because Magnus's body was dead, only his spirit gets taken. Luckily, the planet they go to is within the Eye of Terror, so, you're technically within the warp at the time, so you can kind of exist as just a ghost. So
Wow.
they get there, and it's just Magnus kind of just floating there as a spirit. Cool.
Yes.
No body? No? So that they're safe for the time being, but there's some issues that come from this. So specifically, Magnus bans Ahriman personally from trying to research the flesh change at all. He's like, don't trust you, don't fucking do it. You've been told. And obviously Ahriman just goes, no problem, and then does it anyway because fuck you. Because why wouldn't you, I guess? But the next kind of major event for the Thousand Sons is it's like their own little private crusade across the galaxy. Which it's basically because in the process of Magnus being turned into just like a bodiless spirit. Uh, he also kind of shattered into parts. So it's not his entire soul that got teleported with the Thousand Suns. Parts of it were like scattered across the galaxy. So there's a bunch of versions of Magnus all across the galaxy that all just like embody different traits of who he was as a person. So the Thousand Sons have to go on a little quest to gather them all up and piece them back together like a really shit jigsaw.
It sounds like a game, you know, like that side quest, real quick.
It really,
That
yeah,
just
that's
takes
exactly
too
what it is.
long.
It's a total side quest. I could see doing this in an Elder Scrolls game.
Yes.
So, so the Thousand Sons go on their little series of missions, their side quests, to reunite the various parts of Magnus into one, cohesive being. And
Yes.
I'll give you a quick rundown of the parts they find, right? Because there's a whole storyline for each of them individually, but that's not what we're here for. We're here for Ahriman, but there's, we may as well cover the storyline. So,
Yeah.
The main shard of Magnus, like the largest shard, is the one that ended up with them on the planet of the Sorcerers after they teleported, right? So they're just building pieces back onto that as they go. There was a shard left on Prospero where he died. This one is actually found by Jagatai Khan. So, interestingly, up until this point, there has been like fighting between the legions, but this is still at an early stage where like everyone doesn't openly know that Horus is evil, and they don't openly know like which legions have turned traitor and which ones haven't, right? So there's still a bit of confusion going on. And the White Scars in Jagatai, up until this point, have basically been playing Switzerland. They've been neutral in this whole thing. They're like, I'm not taking a side, because they don't know what's going on. Interestingly, they're the only legion that at one point is getting, like, contradictory orders from, like, the Emperor and Horus. And rather than just picking one and going with it like everyone else does, they just go, you know what, we're just going to wait here until someone tells us what's actually going on. They're like the only reasonable legion for a bit there. But eventually, Jagatai and his legion go to Prospero to try and figure out what the fuck is going on. And when they get there, they just find, like, the destroyed hellscape left in the wake of the war that went on there. And Jagatai finds this, like, version of Magnus just kind of hanging around. And they chat for a while about what's going on, and eventually the Shard of Magnus basically is just like, you really need to pull your head out your ass and pick a fucking side here, dude. Like, I don't care which side, just fucking pick one. Just be decisive for like 5 minutes, please.
Yeah.
Jagatai Khan then kills the Shard, by the way. He then just kills
Fuck
him.
you. He doesn't like getting told off, yeah.
Basically, yeah. But he does pick a side after it. Because I guess the reason he kills him is that he picks the side of whatever side you're not on, you disembodied freak.
Yeah.
Which is a safe bet, I guess, when there's a magical ghost talking to you after you've spent like the last decade being told no magic. You'd probably go, alright, well this guy's probably on the bad side.
Yeah.
At the very least, he's not on my side. He might not be evil, but he's definitely not good. So, Jagatai kills that one. There was a very violent part of Magnus that possessed a human and attacked Ahriman at one point. And this all occurs while they're doing a retrieval mission for another shard. So that's fun. There was a shard that was like the noble warrior spirit version of Magnus, which they do get back. They do manage to retrieve that one. There was a shard on Terra, which represented Magnus's like desire for knowledge. This one's really weird because it was in the past, so Ahriman had to time travel to get it.
Yeah.
So that's a bit strange. You might be noticing something about these shards. Not only are they all really weird, but they're all in places that are like really important to Magnus. They're all like key locations or time periods, I guess, for that one. because there's one on Prospero, the world he grew up on. There's two on Terra at different time periods, because obviously Terra's a big deal for all of them, because it's the home world where they were made and all that. There's one on Nicaea, the planet where they had the big council and it was ruled that sorcery was illegal. So that was a big betrayal for Magnus, obviously, because his dad is also a sorcerer. So they're all, they're all tied to major events for Magnus.
Yep.
But the last shard that anyone knew about was on Terra. There's two there. One in the past that Ahriman time travel for. The other one was just there in the modern day, in like the catacombs under the palace. And Malkador the Sigillite finds it, and this is like Magnus's nobility. This is like the good part of Magnus. And this is the reason that Magnus turns up to the Siege of Terra. Because he doesn't give a fuck about Horus. He doesn't give a fuck about Chaos or Horus. He doesn't turn up to like join the fight. He turns up because he wants the part of his soul back. But he gets there and finds out that Malkador has already like grafted it into another dude. So he can't get it.
That's rough. That stuff.
So just to explain what Malkador actually does here, right? He basically just, because he finds it pretty early on and is just like chatting with good Magnus under the palace for a while. But obviously knowing that evil Magnus is going to come for it, is like, I'm going to graft it into this Thousand Sons Marine that we have. Just so that he'd have to kill his own son to get it, kind of thing, I guess. Or just so he can't get it, really. So this Space Marine, this Thousand Sons Marine that they just happen to have on hand, is a dude named Arvida. But when he like combines the two of them, rather than the person becoming Magnus or becoming, just Arvida, but like more powerful or whatever, what it actually does is becomes a whole new guy called Lanius. It just forms into a new personality.
Yeah.
Lanius, interestingly, goes on to do two interesting things. First, he changes his name to Janus, and second, he becomes the first Grand Master of the Grey Knights. Yeah, becomes the first Grand Master of the Legion of Demon Hunting Space Marines, because he's,
nice.
Permanently good, because he's, half of just Magnus's good part, and he's also an incredibly powerful sorcerer. So, he goes on to become the first Grand Master of the Grey Knights, which is very interesting. But
it's a good title. It's a good title. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's completely irrelevant to what we're talking about, though. Yeah. Anyway. So, for the record, if you ever wonder why Magnus is vaguely evil, it's because all of the good in him is away fighting demons from, Jupiter. So, yeah. The good part of him's wearing a trench coat and pretending it's someone else at this point in time. So that's why he's always vaguely evil, I guess. Or that's what I've always assumed was the reason for him being vaguely evil. But maybe it's just kind of a dick, I don't know.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, but without that part of it, you're basically left with a guy who's pretty much just an arsehole with godlike powers, which is not a great thing to have running around the galaxy, but there's an awful lot of them, interestingly, in the modern day. It's like every third guy is just a dickhead with godlike powers, it seems. There's a stage where it starts to become like the Avengers, where every week there's a new evil godlike arsehole turning up just to take a shot at you.
I mean, it's pretty standard stuff at this point, right?
It really is, yeah. So it's probably worth mentioning that now that the Thousand Sons live, on a planet that is within the Eye of Terror, they're living within the warp, and being constantly surrounded by the warp has massively accelerated their genetic flaw. So they're mutating and dying faster than ever while they live on the planet of the Sorcerers. Which, by the way, is what they've titled the planet they now live on after they got teleported. Oh. So, there's that. So this is where Ahriman's, research kind of starts to ramp up because he's doing it in secret because fuck Magnus. But because so many of them are dying faster than ever, it's more important than ever that they find a cure for it. So eventually Ahriman figures out a way to cure it. Right? He figures out this big grand ritual that they need like all the most powerful sorcerers working together to be able to do. Obviously, Magnus will never take a part in it, so they never even mention it to him. They hide it from him as best they can. And Ahriman steals the Book of Magnus briefly, which is a book that Magnus always carries. I think I actually have a picture of Magnus ready to go. Yeah, there you go. On his left hip, he's got a book, big tome. That is the Book of Magnus. And basically just records all of his fucking incantations and shit, all his sorcery bullshit in it. It's like his magical grimoire. So, yeah, Ahriman basically uses that book, Magnus's own research and powers, to devise a massive ritual that will, in essence, cure the genetic flaw within the Legion. That is the idea. Obviously, the first flaw with this plan is he needs an ungodly number of sorcerers to be able to fucking do it. So he needs to go around and recruit all of, like, the best sorcerers from his Legion to join him in this secret ritual that their dad will fucking hate. So he does do it. He does manage to organize this, like, cabal to work in secret on the ritual. And I'm going to give you the names and, like, a couple of details about a few of the more, like, important, the more, like, named characters that he ends up with. So my personal favorite of them all is a guy called Ignis, who is an incredibly powerful and destructive sorcerer. He's one of the Pyre, so he's all about fire and stuff, which you might have guessed because his name's Ignis. But his whole thing is, like, nuking planets with firestorms on his own and stuff like that. He's pretty cool dude. He ends up recruiting a dude called Hathor Mat, which is the Magister of the Pavoni, so he's one of the really high-ranking members of that cult. He ends up with Ammon, who is the first Magister of the Corvidae, or who was the first Magister of the Corvidae. So Ahriman took this guy's job as he got better, which is fun. For the record, Ammon was the hardest guy to recruit, because Ammon is like a devout loyalist to Magnus. It's like, we follow Dad and nothing else. Fuck the Emperor, fuck Horus, fuck demons, fuck Tzeentch, fuck all y'all. It's Magnus all the way. And Ahriman manages to convince this guy to join him with a great deal of work. It's the hardest guy to recruit, is this dude Ammon. And there's also a few other ones. There's Menkaura, who he's also able to see the future. He rapidly goes down a very slippery slope with that, I might add. But think about it, right? If you're a sorcerer whose whole thing is, fire or seeing the future or telekinesis, whatever you want it to be, right? And then you're suddenly not required to follow the rules set out by the God Emperor anymore about what you're allowed to do, and you're also surrounded by demons and stuff, you pretty quickly end up on a slippery slope into some pretty shady magic. Menkaura is like a perfect example of the direction you do not want to go with seeing the future. This dude ends up with far too many arms and far too many eyes.
Yeah.
We'll talk about him later on, though. There's also a dude called Sobek and Tallbeck. There's a lot of Becks involved, right? But he recruits a lot of the Thousand Sons, like, best sorcerers to join him in this big ritual. And after the Siege of Terra, Ahriman set his plan in motion, where he gathered his cabal and they enacted the big ritual. It went horribly wrong. It reduced the majority of the Legion to automatons. They are what is referred to as Rubric or Rubric Marines, and I'll show you what they typically look like. Which this before this point, this was just a Thousand Sun Space Marine. They probably would have been red at the time, but modern day they're blue. But whatever, they just repainted their armor. But it's important to know that they're referred to as Rubric or Rubric Marines if they're the automatons, because it's mentioned a lot in this storyline. And if we have to explain it every time, it's going to be a whole thing. But yeah, the whole spell, the whole ritual that Ahriman does is referred to as the Rubric, or the Rubric of Ahriman. It's just the title for this spell. So the automaton marines that were created from it are referred to as Rubric Marines, or the Rubricae, as in of the Rubric. So, the other side effect to this whole ritual going massively wrong is that all of the remaining sorcerers became massively more powerful. Which doesn't help the slippery slope thing I was mentioning earlier.
Oh,
so the whole spell only ended when Magnus like stepped in and fucking stopped it, because it was kind of just like running off the rails. I don't know if you know, there's a thing with diesel engines that they can run away with themselves, is the term people usually use, where the safety systems fail and they just start going faster and faster and faster and faster until eventually they just explode. That's kind of what was going on with this spell, where it start because of how much power was in it, and it was kind of just going and going, and none of them had any power to like slow it down, until Magnus kind of came in from the outside and was like, "Nope, off." But like this spell was like visible across the entirety of the warp. There were demons, you know, in the other side of existence that saw this shit going on. Shit died all across the galaxy because of this, right? This was a whole fucking thing. There were souls just burning out like light bulbs all across the galaxy because of this shit. It was far more than should ever have been attempted with sorcerers of this level. But it did make them all significantly more powerful and kill the vast majority of their brothers. So, you know, kind of to be expected of a spell that goes that horribly wrong. And in the aftermath of this, obviously you'd expect Magnus to, you know, go on the warpath, but it was kind of just depressing for him, because he loved his sons more than anything. Everything Magnus does is for his sons, right? Fuck the Emperor, it's all about my kids. That's Magnus's whole thing. But since his favorite son reduced his legion, his other sons, to just dust floating in their armor, to just automatons, he was just like depressed right down to the lowest part of his soul. So rather, because he didn't want to see any more of his sons die, so he wasn't going to kill them. So he stays his hand and just exiles them all, permanently banishing them all from the planet of the sorcerers, so that they cannot return. Like, just like magically brands them all with a keep out sign, basically. So they all get kind of cast out into the galaxy, and they're all physically unable to return home now. Which, I guess, is about as good as you could expect that to go in the aftermath of what you did there.
I guess.
So, interestingly, this is like the thing that makes that makes Magnus like stare into space and, like Horus once did, swear that he would see the galaxy burn. This is the thing that makes Magnus actually turn proper evil. But that's a separate story, because we're not talking about Magnus. We're talking about Ahriman, who, after being banished, is basically just left as a wandering exile, trying to figure out what the fuck to do next. Which, as it turns out, he basically decides on doing nothing next, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
It's nothing for a very long time. But yeah, Ahriman's exile is where our story is really going to kick off here. So I think that'll tide us over for this little intro episode. You know, I think we're dead set to get into this properly.
Yeah, he just became jobless, and now what do we do?
Basically, yeah, he's taking a gap year. That's it.
Yeah. All right. Well, do you want me to round us off for the first episode?
Yeah, go for it.
Season 6. I mean, I still can't believe the fact that we're saying Season 6 right now.
I know, it's not. So.
That's the first project we ever, like,
Stuck to.
continue to actually work on and continue for years.
Yeah.
But yeah, thank you guys for listening to this episode of season 6 of the Iterators of the Imperium podcast. It's been me, Mess, and Ryan, of course. And we'll catch you in the next one. Take care and peace.
Bye.